In the raw frontier lands of 1890, two outlaws named Purvis and Buddy wander the desert. Spotting three travelers asleep, the outlaws creep into their camp and murder them in cold blood. As they rummage through the victims' bags searching for valuables, they discover nothing but scholarly books, revealing that the men they just slaughtered were innocent professors. Suddenly, Purvis catches the distant thunder of approaching hooves. In their haste, the outlaws stumble into a strange, eerie valley littered with scattered human skeletons. Before they can comprehend the macabre sight, a deafening, animalistic wail echoes through the canyon walls. A group of feral humanoid creatures ambushes them, descending upon Buddy and killing him on the spot. Terrified beyond words by the horror, Purvis abandons his partner and bolts into the wilderness as fast as his legs can carry him. Meanwhile, away from the blood-soaked valley, sits the peaceful frontier town of Bright Hope. Among them is Arthur, a dedicated foreman who was recently laid up at home after breaking his leg on a job out in the wilds. His devoted wife, Samantha, who works as the town's assistant doctor, tends to his injury right in their living room. Samantha expresses how deeply grateful she is to have him home for once, admitting that his long absences usually leave her feeling incredibly isolated. 11 days later, after dark, Purvis arrives at Bright Hope and buries his stolen belongings under a tree and heads for the town's saloon where Bruder, a local educated man and a known womanizer, is having a drink. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hunt is busy making soup when suddenly Chicory, the town's elderly backup deputy, rushes in and informs him about Purvis, the stranger he saw while burying his belonging. At the saloon, Hunt confronts Purvis. When asked his name, Purvis hesitates before giving the name Buddy in an attempt to hide his identity. Sheriff Hunt shoots Purvis in the leg when he breaks into a sprint for the door. The lawmen haul the wounded outlaw to the town jail and lock him up. Needing someone to patch up the prisoner's leg, Hunt sends for the town doctor, only to find the man is far too drunk to operate. With no other choice, Bruder goes to fetch Samantha, the doctor's assistant. He informs Samantha of the situation at the jail, and without hesitation, she grabs her medical kit. At the jailhouse, Samantha assesses Purvis's bloody leg and asks the sheriff if the man is truly as dangerous as he seems. Through the quiet hours of the night, Samantha works tirelessly under the lantern light, eventually extracting the bullet from Purvis's leg. Suddenly, a frantic energy erupts at the town stables. The young stable boy rushes into the barn, but a sudden movement in the shadows causes him to freeze. Two of the cannibalistic animal-like creatures lunge from the darkness with savage fury, ending his life in a horrific instant. The monsters have successfully followed Purvis's bloody trail straight into the heart of Bright Hope. When morning breaks, Arthur wakes up and calls out for Samantha, but the house is completely empty. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hunt is fixing breakfast at his home when the stable owner bursts through the door with grim news. The stable boy has been slaughtered, and both the prisoner and the guarding deputy have vanished from the jail without a trace. Stunned, Hunt grabs his gear and races to the stables, where he finds the boy's mutilated remains. Sprinting to the jailhouse, the sheriff discovers an empty cell and a primitive, bone-tipped arrow embedded deep into the wooden wall. Hunt immediately orders Deputy Chicory to take the arrow to the town's Native American professor, an expert on indigenous relics, to identify the attackers. Meanwhile, the sheriff carries the horrific update directly to Arthur. Arthur's world shatters instantly. He stumbles out into the town square and collapses into a chair as the sheriff calls an emergency meeting of every able-bodied soul in Bright Hope to figure out a rescue plan. The native professor arrives shortly after, having carefully examined the primitive weapon. The weapon belongs to a distinct prehistoric breed of cave dwellers known as Troglodytes. They are bloodthirsty, feral brutes who do not consume animal flesh. They crave human meat, and are so savage they would devour their own mothers. Anyone foolish enough to wander into their territory never returns alive. When Hunt presses for their location, the professor pulls out a map, pointing directly to a remote, God-forsaken stretch of canyon. Sheriff Hunt refuses to back down, hell-bent on bringing Samantha and his deputy home. Despite his severely broken leg, Arthur insists on joining the posse. Bruder steps forward next, volunteering his gun for the expedition. After a heavy goodbye, the four men gear up and ride out into the frontier. The grueling trek into the badlands is projected to take 4 to 5 days. By evening, they establish a camp in a secluded rocky enclave. After devouring a quick hot stew by the bonfire, the men crash out under the stars. At dawn, they saddle up once more and push further westward, refilling their canteens at a shallow river to combat the relentless heat. Hunt peers through his spyglass, watching Arthur lag severely behind. The broken leg is slowing their pace to a crawl. Arthur pours raw whiskey straight onto his open wound to cleanse it. Though he carries heavy painkillers, he holds off on taking them for now. When he finally hobbles back to the group, Chicory safely confiscates his sidearm, and Hunt demands he hand over the pills. The sheriff warns him that overdosing on the trail could kill a man quicker than the desert sun. Arthur complies, receives his weapon back, and the posse pushes forward. As night falls again, they hunker down for another tense camp. Out of nowhere, two Mexican drifters stumble into the firelight with their hands raised high, pleading for peace and claiming they are just innocent travelers. Hunt barks at them to toss their weapons, but the men swear blind they are unarmed. Bruder doesn't buy the act for a single heartbeat. In a flash, he draws his pistol and drops both men with precise shots to the chest. The rest of the posse violently wheels on Bruder. Bruder stands his ground entirely unfazed, stating that out in the wild you trust no one. Chicory inspects the corpses and whistles low. Bruder was right. Both drifters had loaded pistols tucked hidden in their belts. As they drift off to sleep, Arthur hears a sudden scuffle. Arthur fires his rifle, blasting the intruder clean through the chest. The thief crumples dead, but the deafening gunfire spooks their horses, causing them to bolt wild into the night. It turns out the drifters had a larger group of companions trailing them, who successfully rustled the mounts and rode hard into the darkness. Bruder is gutted. His personal horse was exceptionally loyal and would never have gone easily with strangers. Without their steeds, the quartet is reduced to traveling on foot. Arthur's leg screams with agony. Refusing to jeopardize the mission, he waves the others ahead, telling them to keep moving while he follows at his own pace. And Arthur plans to track them by having the group drop a small cairn, a stack of stones, to mark the trail every so often. Later, after reuniting, Hunt checks Arthur's leg and finds it severely infected. After cleaning up the wound, Chicory splints the leg and gives him a heavy dose of painkiller. They leave him to rest while they scout ahead. The remaining three hike until sunrise, scouting the rocky terrain until they finally discover a cave mouth hidden high up in the cracks of the canyon. Before they can formulate a tactical plan to infiltrate the high ground, a pair of the savage beasts burst from the rocks. A fading Bruder shoves a spare revolver into Hunt's hands. He gasps for them to leave him behind and go save Samantha and the deputy. Realizing there is no saving him, Hunt and Chicory reluctantly push deeper into the canyon, leaving Bruder propped up against a boulder. Moments later, a hulking cannibal lumbers out of the rocks with a raised club to finish him off. Deeper within the cavernous labyrinth, two more Troglodytes ambush Hunt and Chicory. Overwhelmed by the raw, brute force of the attackers, the lawmen are clubbed senseless and hauled off like sacks of grain into the black depths of the earth. When Hunt and Chicory regain consciousness, they find themselves locked inside a filthy, bone-strewn cage deep in the heart of the caves. Nearby, they spot Samantha and the captured deputy. Samantha quickly whispers the horrific lay of the land, explaining that the creatures are pure, unadulterated evil. They have only kept them breathing because they eat people. Suddenly, the massive Troglodyte chief storms into the cavern, letting out a guttural roar that echoes off the stone walls. Flanked by two feral attendants, he points a menacing finger at the captured deputy. The beasts violently yank the screaming man from the cage and drag him into the center of the cavern. In one agonizing, fluid motion, they scalp the deputy alive, peeling his hair and flesh from his skull. As his voice breaks from the screaming, they hoist him completely upside down by his ankles and pull with immense, monstrous strength, ripping his torso completely in half like wet paper. Meanwhile, far back on the trail, Arthur finally stirs from his drug-induced stupor. Driven by pure survival instinct and love for Samantha, he travels through the grueling night, limping beneath the moonlight. By first light, he finally reaches the ominous shadow of the canyon caves. He collapses into a narrow rock crevice to rest. Inside the lair, Samantha uses the distraction of the feast to size up their remaining foes. She counts a total of 12 males in the tribe, plus 2 heavily pregnant women whose eyes have been gouged out blind. With 3 of the males already killed during the fights outside, they quickly hatch a desperate ploy. Using a leftover bottle of whiskey, Hunt laces the alcohol with the remainder of Arthur's heavy liquid painkiller tincture, aiming to create a lethal, sleep-inducing poison. He purposely lures 3 of the cave guards over to the cage. The gluttonous creatures take the bait greedily, snatching the bottle from Hunt's hands and draining the toxic brew dry. Outside the cave mouth, 2 roaming Troglodytes catch Arthur's scent in the wind and charge his position in the crevice. Arthur draws his weapon and plants a bullet directly into each of their skulls. As the second monster drops dead in the dirt, Arthur notices a jewelry-like object embedded in their windpipes. After cutting one out, he realizes it is like a whistle that they use to communicate between them. He blows on it, luring another tribesman close, then kills him. In the cave, realizing 2 of their men were poisoned, the tribe leader grows angry. He and another tribesman pull Hunt from his cell, cut open his stomach, and shove the hot opium flask into the wound. The leader then takes Hunt's rifle and shoots his arm and stomach. Arthur arrives and kills one of the tribesmen, while Hunt kills the leader with one of the tribe's bone tomahawks. Arthur frees Samantha and Chicory, while a mortally wounded Hunt stays behind with his rifle. He prepares to kill the surviving cannibals when they return, to prevent them from chasing after them and terrorizing Bright Hope. As the 3 leave the cave, they see 2 pregnant females who are blinded and have all their limbs amputated. At a distance from the cave, they hear 3 gunshots implying that Sheriff Hunt may have killed the remaining males of the tribe. Chicory acknowledges the gunshots with a half-hearted smile. Tired, hurt, and with few supplies, the 3 survivors begin the journey towards home.